It's time to analyse another sample exam style question to help you better understand the exam paper, the marking scheme, allocation of marks, to help ensure you get the maximum number of marks available. And today we're going to have a little look at a question that applies to an ancient or medieval civilization. Alright, so if we start off and have a little read, it says ancient Rome is an example of an ancient or medieval civilization. It was founded in the 8th century BC and collapsed in the 5th century AD. It's always important to read these kind of instructions because there could be relevant information to later questions. So it says study the sources below and answer the questions that follow, and there are 6 sources here that relate to ancient Rome. So then our first question is, classify each source pictured on the previous page. Now, I haven't done all of this for you just in case you got this for homework, and I don't want to give all the answers away. But basically, you got a maximum of 6 marks. So you got 1 mark for classifying each as either primary or secondary, okay? And then you got another 1 mark for classifying each as either written, visual, oral, or tactile. And I've done the first one for you. So the first one is the Colosseum, okay? And you can see that it is a primary source, so I get a mark for that, and it's a tactile source, so I get a mark for that, okay? So straight away you have got a maximum of 12 marks just for ticking a few boxes, all right? Question B says, give 1 strength and 1 weakness of primary sources to historians. Now, this is a generic question that could be asked for pretty much any topic or asked in relation to kind of any section of the course. So we're starting off with our strength. So it's an original source of information. It's from the time being studied. It's often a first-hand account. Again, this is marked on a sliding scale, okay? So you got 3 marks if your answer is very good, 2 if it was good, 1 if it was weak, 0 if there's no attempt or incorrect. To make sure that you're getting the maximum possible marks for these sliding scale questions, you need to make sure that each point you make has a fact or an example or a definition or an explanation or a statistic or a keyword. And here we have our definition, okay, about what a primary source is, and then we have an explanation that is often a first-hand account. The second part of that question was a weakness of primary sources. So we said it could be biased. So there's our keyword, which means that it's one-sided. That's our definition. And it should be cross-referenced to avoid this. And that's our explanation, okay? And that's how you get your other 3 marks for like a sliding scale question like this. Question C says, which of these sources do you think is the most useful to historians? Explain your answer. So you could pick any one of these sources as being the most useful, okay? The answer that I've given is just in relation to source 4, but again, you could pick any one of these. So it says, source 4 is the most useful. It is a visual primary source found at Pompeii. It shows us how people decorated their houses at the time. It can be understood by most people as a visual source, not dependent on what language you speak, okay? So again, this is a sliding scale question, except this time it's out of a maximum of 6, all right? So a few things to point out. I have clearly stated what source that I'm talking about. I have used keywords like visual source, primary source. I've given an example of Pompeii, and also that information is right there. So that information is there on the page for you. I've given an explanation as to kind of why I have, selected the mosaic as the most useful. Another explanation that it can be understood by most people, and it's kind of not dependent on what language you speak. So again, you want to receive kind of top marks on these sliding scale answers. You make sure that each point you make has a fact or an example or a definition or an explanation or a statistic or a keyword in it, okay? Our next question says, which of these sources do you think is the least useful to historians? Explain your answer. Again, you could pick any source on the previous page. So you could pick any one of these, okay? Except the source that you mentioned as your most useful, all right? So basically it can't be like most useful and least useful. And again, this is a sliding scale answer, maximum of 6 marks, and our sliding scale is out of 5 to 6 very good, 3 to 4 good, 1 to 2 weak, 0 no attempt or incorrect. And again, to make sure we get the maximum number of marks on these sliding scale questions, you want to make sure every point that you make has a fact or an example or a definition or an explanation or a statistic or a keyword, okay? So again, we've clearly stated source 2 is the least useful. It is a secondary source meant for entertainment, not educational purposes. It was made after the event shown. So kind of our points here that are going to kind of stand out. We've said that it's a secondary source, so it's a keyword, and we've given an explanation of this source, so it's entertainment, not educational purposes, and we've explained why it's a secondary source, or how I know it's a secondary source, because it was made after the event shown. Question E is also a question you could get for pretty much any topic. So it says, list 2 other sources you could use to find out more about this topic. And we have a maximum of 6 marks for it, so it's 3 for each. Okay, starting off, if you can give me specific named examples like the Circus Maximus, then do. Okay, think back to sources you came across in your textbook, maybe images you studied in class, maybe comprehension or source questions you've done, video clips you may have seen. Okay, so if you can give me specific named examples of sources, do. All right, if you can't, there's a few things we could do. So you could say something like a speech, okay? And using speech as an example of a source, you can use that in most topics, okay? You just add in a person from that era to make it specific to this chapter, to this topic. So you said a speech delivered by Julius Caesar, okay? If this was asking you about sources from World War II, you could say something like a speech delivered by Churchill, okay? Right. Question F says, as part of your junior cycle history course, you studied a named example of an ancient or medieval civilization, such as the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, or the Normans. Name the civilization you have studied. So there's 3 marks for this, 3 fairly straightforward marks, okay? So don't forget to answer all questions, including little ones like this. I obviously have ancient Rome written down here. Our final question says, compare and contrast the lives of 2 different types of people in the ancient or medieval civilization that you listed in part F. So the people that you talk about here must be from this civilization, okay? And then it says, write about at least 2 of these in your answer. These are here as prompts, as clues, as kind of hints to help you out, all right? Okay. So this question is a little bit different to some of the others that we've seen. It's a maximum of 12 marks, okay? And instead of a sliding scale, 3 marks are given to each valid relevant point, okay? And again, to make sure you have lots of valid relevant points, make sure you have your facts, your examples, your definitions, your explanations, your statistics, your keywords, okay? So we're starting off. There were 2 types of people in ancient Rome, and they had very different lives. So there we have addressed the question straight away. Patricians were wealthy upper class, so we've used a keyword and a definition. They lived in a domus in the city and a villa in the countryside, so again a keyword and a keyword. Patrician houses often contained an atrium, keyword, with a pond or a pool, explanation, a covered walkway called a peristylum, so explanation, keyword, and underfloor heating called a hypocaust, so explanation and keyword again. Plebeians were all other Romans, so again keyword, explanation. They lived in apartment blocks called insulae, so explanation, keyword. They got water from public fountains supplied by aqueducts, keyword. Patricians and plebeians enjoyed public entertainment like gladiator fighting in the Colosseum and chariot racing in the Circus Maximus. And again, loads of keywords scattered throughout there. Okay, so in this answer, I have compared and contrasted the lives of 2 different people living in Rome, and I've looked at living conditions and entertainment. Usually if you're given an option like this, write about at least 2, you should do kind of as many as you can. So maybe do 3, do 4, do all 5. But I had already filled my writing space, so that's why I only wrote about 2 of them, but I've still addressed 2 of them because that's what was stipulated to do in the question.